Blood pooled on the dust-caked floorboards of Lily Jane's mercantile as she gripped the counter to steady herself. Her father lay dead in the street outside, gunned down by bandits who'd fled with the month's earnings, leaving her with a failing business and a mountain of debt that would surely crush her before winter's end. Fort Bridger, Wyoming Territory, 1871, was an unforgiving place for a woman alone. The settlement had grown considerably since its founding as a supply station along the Oregon Trail, but the expansion of the Union Pacific Railroad 2 years prior had brought both prosperity and predators to the frontier town. Lily wiped her hands on her apron, smearing blood across the once pristine fabric. At 22, she possessed a fierce independence that had annoyed her father in life and would now be tested in his death. She surveyed the ransacked shop with steely determination in her green eyes. Scattered goods lay strewn across the floor, flour, sugar, beans, and coffee spilled from their containers. The glass display case where they'd kept the more valuable items had been shattered, its contents stolen. Outside, voices gathered as townsfolk responded to the commotion. Sheriff Denton would be along soon, but Lily knew the outcome already. The Baldwin gang had struck again, and like the previous 3 robberies in the county, they would vanish into the Wind River Range without a trace. "Miss Jane," a deep voice called from the doorway. Lily straightened her shoulders and turned, unwilling to display weakness before whoever had entered. "We're closed," she said firmly. Xavier Lawson stood in the doorway, his tall frame silhouetted against the afternoon sun. The cowboy removed his hat, revealing dark hair that curled at his collar. His expression was solemn as his eyes traveled from Lily to the bloodstains on the floor. "I heard the shots," he said simply. "Came to see if help was needed." Lily had seen Xavier around town since his arrival 3 months ago. He worked for the Henderson Ranch outside of town, breaking horses and driving cattle. He was known to be skilled with both animals and his pistol, but he kept mostly to himself. "Nothing to be done now," Lily replied, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "Sheriff's been called." Xavier nodded, his blue eyes taking in the destruction. "Your father, dead." The word came out harder than she'd intended. "They shot him when he refused to open the safe." Xavier stepped inside, careful to avoid the broken glass. "I'm sorry for your loss, Miss Jane." "Your sympathy doesn't stock shelves or pay creditors, Mr. Lawson." If her sharpness surprised him, he didn't show it. Instead, he knelt and began gathering scattered tins of food. "What are you doing?" Lily demanded. "Helping," he answered simply, continuing his work. "I didn't ask for your help." Xavier glanced up at her, his expression unreadable. "No, madam, you didn't." They worked in silence until Sheriff Denton arrived with the undertaker. Lily provided her account of the robbery with detached precision, refusing to allow her emotions to surface before the gathering crowd. When they finally carried her father's body away, she stood alone in the doorway, watching as the townspeople dispersed, offering condolences that seemed to evaporate in the dry Wyoming air. Xavier remained, having restored some semblance of order to the shop. "You should get some rest," he suggested quietly. Lily shook her head. "There's inventory to take, insurance papers to find, a funeral to arrange." She glanced at the safe in the corner, still locked, containing what little hadn't been in the register. "And I need to figure out how to make next week's payment to the bank." "All of which will be there tomorrow," Xavier countered. "You've had a shock." "I don't have the luxury of shock, Mr. Lawson." Lily moved behind the counter, pulling out a ledger. "Thank you for your assistance today, but I can manage from here." Xavier studied her for a long moment before replacing his hat. "I'll be by tomorrow to fix that broken window." "That won't be necessary." Wasn't asking permission, Miss Jane." With a slight tip of his hat, he turned and left, boots echoing on the wooden sidewalk. Lily watched him go, irritation and something else, something she refused to acknowledge, mingling in her chest. She returned to her ledger, trying to make sense of the numbers that now seemed to blur before her eyes. Eventually, exhaustion claimed her, and she slumped forward onto the counter, tears finally coming as the reality of her situation settled over her like a shroud. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, the Wyoming sun painting the distant mountains in shades of gold and purple. Lily had spent the night in the small apartment above the store, tossing restlessly on sheets that still smelled of her father's pipe tobacco. She rose early, splashed cold water on her face, and dressed in a simple dark skirt and shirtwaist. Her auburn hair, usually neatly pinned, was hastily arranged, several tendrils escaping to frame her face. She descended the back stairs to the store, steeling herself for the day ahead. The destruction seemed even worse in the morning light, the shelves depleted, the floor still bearing dark stains despite her efforts to clean it. Through the shattered front window, she could see townsfolk already moving about their business, some glancing curiously at the mercantile as they passed. Lily had just begun cataloging the remaining inventory when a knock at the door interrupted her. She looked up to find Xavier Lawson standing there, arms laden with lumber and tools. Behind him stood another man from the Henderson ranch, carrying a sheet of glass. "Told you I'd be by," Xavier said simply. Lily straightened. "Mr. Lawson, I appreciate the gesture, but I can't afford to pay for repairs right now." Xavier set down his supplies. "Didn't mention payment. I don't accept charity." "Good thing this isn't charity then." He rolled up his sleeves, revealing strong forearms tanned by the sun. "Consider it an investment in the only decent mercantile between here and Green River." Before Lily could protest further, Xavier and his companion had begun removing the broken window frame. She watched them work for a moment, torn between pride and practicality. Finally, practicality won. Without a secure window, she couldn't reopen the store, and without the store, she had nothing. "Thank you," she said stiffly, turning back to her inventory. Xavier nodded without looking up from his work. The morning progressed with Lily tallying losses while Xavier repaired the window. Occasional customers came by, expressing sympathy and inquiring when the store would reopen. To each, Lily gave the same answer: soon. The reality was less certain. Around midday, the bank manager, Howard Prescott, arrived. Dressed in a fine suit that set him apart from most of Fort Bridger's residents, he entered with an air of forced solemnity that did little to mask his true purpose. "Miss Jane," he began, removing his hat. "Please accept my condolences on your father's passing. A terrible business." "Thank you, Mr. Prescott." Lily set down her pencil. "What can I do for you?" "Well, I hate to bring up business at such a time, but there is the matter of your father's loan." He cleared his throat. "The bank was very accommodating when your father fell behind on payments, but with his passing, well, the full amount comes due." Lily felt her stomach tighten. "The full amount? That's over $2,000. "Yes, indeed. Standard clause in the contract, I'm afraid." "Of course, if you wish to apply for a new loan in your own name." "A woman alone applying for a business loan?" Lily's laugh held no humor. "We both know how that would end, Mr. Prescott." The banker shifted uncomfortably. "Well, perhaps if you had a male relative willing to co-sign, or a husband." "I have neither," Lily said flatly. "Then I'm afraid the bank will have to begin proceedings to recover the property. You have until the end of the month, 3 weeks. That's impossible. I'm sorry, Miss Jane." "Business is business." Prescott replaced his hat, nodded to Xavier, who had paused in his work to listen, and departed. Lily stood rooted to the spot, her mind racing. 3 weeks to raise $2,000 was impossible. Even if the store had been undamaged and fully stocked, she couldn't generate that kind of money. "You're going to wear a hole in that floor," Xavier observed after watching her pace for several minutes. Lily stopped. She'd almost forgotten his presence. "I apologize for the distraction." "No distraction." He fitted the last piece of molding around the new window. "Though you might want to consider options besides wearing out your boots." "And what options would those be, Mr. Lawson? Should I beg the bank for mercy, sell the store for a fraction of its worth, or perhaps find a husband in the next 3 weeks?" Her voice rose with each suggestion, frustration breaking through her carefully maintained composure. Xavier wiped his hands on a cloth. "Those all sound like terrible options. They're the only ones I have." "Not necessarily." He gathered his tools. "What if you had a partner?" Lily stared at him. "A partner? Someone to help with the capital and the labor while you run the business side of things. And where would I find such a person?" "Most men in Fort Bridger want to own a business outright, not partner with a woman." Xavier met her gaze steadily. "You're looking at him." Lily's surprise gave way to suspicion. "You want to be my business partner? Why?" "I've been saving to start my own operation for years. Was thinking of a small ranch, but a mercantile's a good investment too. Steady business, especially with the railroad bringing new settlers." "And what do you know about running a store?" "Not much," he admitted. "But I know business and I know people. The rest I can learn." Lily studied him, trying to discern his true motives. Xavier Lawson had arrived in Fort Bridger only months ago. While he seemed respectable enough, she knew little about him beyond his reputation as a skilled ranch hand. "Why would you want to invest in a failing store owned by a woman you barely know?" "Because it's not failing, it was robbed. There's a difference." He leaned against the newly repaired window frame. "This store's been the backbone of Fort Bridger for years. With some capital and hard work, it can be again." Lily hesitated. The offer was tempting, perhaps her only hope of keeping the store, but she was reluctant to surrender even partial control of the business her father had built. "I'll need time to consider it," she finally said. Xavier nodded. "Fair enough. Windows fixed. I'll be at the Henderson Ranch if you decide you're interested." He gathered his tools and headed for the door, then paused. "One more thing, Miss Jane. Those men who killed your father, the Baldwin gang, they've been causing trouble all over the territory. Someone needs to stop them." "And that someone is you?" Lily raised an eyebrow. "No, that's for the law, but if they come back here." He left the threat unfinished, tipped his hat, and departed. Lily watched him go, then turned to survey the repaired window. The work was skillfully done, the new glass clear and strong in its frame. If Xavier's business sense matched his carpentry skills, perhaps his offer deserved consideration. But first, she had a funeral to arrange and a store to reopen. The question of partnerships would have to wait. The funeral for Harold Jane was held 2 days later at the small church on the edge of town. Despite the short notice, nearly half of Fort Bridger's residents attended, a testament to the merchants standing in the community. Lily sat alone in the front pew, her black mourning dress stark against the wooden bench. She accepted condolences with quiet dignity, her eyes dry though her heart ached. Xavier Lawson attended, standing at the back of the church in a clean shirt and his least worn trousers. He offered no words when Lily passed, only a respectful nod which she returned. Something about his silent presence provided an unexpected comfort. The following morning, Lily reopened the mercantile. The shelves were sparsely stocked, but she had organized what remained to create an illusion of abundance. The townspeople came, some out of genuine need, others from curiosity or sympathy, but all seemed relieved to see the store open again. By midday, Lily had made nearly $15 in sales, a respectable sum but far from what she needed to save the store. She was arranging a display of canned goods when Xavier entered, his hat in his hands. "Good to see the place open," he commented, glancing around at the half-empty shelves. "People need supplies with or without." She didn't finish the sentence. Xavier nodded. "Have you given any thought to my proposal?" Lily straightened. "I have, and I'm willing to discuss terms." She gestured to the back room. "Not here." In the small office behind the store, Lily closed the door and turned to face Xavier. "Before we discuss anything, I need to know more about you, Mr. Lawson. You arrived in Fort Bridger only a few months ago. Where were you before that?" "How do I know you're not planning to take my father's store and leave me with nothing?" Xavier leaned against the desk. "Fair questions. I was born in Missouri, raised on a small farm, fought for the Union in the war, 2nd Kansas Cavalry. After, I worked cattle drives from Texas up to Kansas, then spent 2 years with the Butterfield Stage Company as a guard. Came to Wyoming looking for opportunity." He met her gaze directly. "As for taking your store, if that was my intention, I just wait for the bank to foreclose and buy it at auction for less than what I'm offering as a partnership stake." Lily considered his words. There was a straightforward logic to them she couldn't deny. "How much can you invest?" $1,500. The amount surprised her. That's a considerable sum for a ranch hand. Been saving a long time, living cheap and working hard. It's not enough to clear the debt. No, but it's enough to make a substantial payment and renegotiate terms. Banks prefer getting most of their money to foreclosing on properties they don't want to manage. Lily found herself impressed by his understanding of finance. "And what would you expect in return for this investment?" "Equal partnership. Shared profits, shared decisions." "This has been a Jane family business for 15 years, Lily protested. "And it can stay Jane on the sign," Xavier replied evenly. "I'm not looking to change the name, just to help keep it running." Lily paced the small office. "And what would your role be in this partnership?" "Whatever's needed. Security, supply runs, negotiating with wholesalers and the railroad." He paused. "Men in these parts still respond better to other men in business matters. That's just how it is." The statement, while true, irked her. "And I would handle the day-to-day operations. Bookkeeping, customers, inventory. Unless you'd prefer otherwise. I'm not much for ledgers, but I can learn." Lily stopped pacing. "I have one condition. If we do this, the partnership agreement must include a clause allowing me to buy you out once the business is profitable again." Xavier considered this. "Fair enough, provided there's a minimum time frame, say 3 years, 2.5. Despite herself, Lily smiled slightly. "You drive a hard bargain, Mr. Lawson," Xavier, he corrected. "If we're to be partners, we should use given names." Xavier then. The name felt foreign on her tongue. 2.5 years with first option to buy you out at fair market value." "Agreed." He extended his hand. Lily hesitated only briefly before shaking it. His palm was warm and calloused, his grip firm but not overpowering. "We should have a proper contract drawn up," she said, withdrawing her hand. "Judge Harrington can handle it. I'll speak to him tomorrow." "I'll need to see the money before signing anything," Lily added. Xavier nodded. "Of course. It's in the bank in Cheyenne. I can have it here by week's end." Lily felt a mixture of relief and trepidation. She was no longer alone in her struggle, but she had also surrendered a measure of control over her future. What will Mr. Henderson say about losing his ranch hand? Already spoke to him. He understands a man wanting his own business. "You were that confident I'd agree." Xavier's mouth curved slightly. "Hopeful, not confident." The bell over the store's front door jingled, signaling a customer. Lily moved toward the office door. "I should get back to work. We can finalize details once you have the money. I'll ride for Cheyenne first thing tomorrow, Xavier promised. As Lily returned to the store, she found herself wondering if she had made the right decision. Taking on a partner, particularly one she barely knew, was risky. But with the bank's deadline looming, she had few alternatives. And there was something about Xavier Lawson, a steadfastness in his manner that inspired a tentative trust. Only time would tell if that trust was warranted. True to his word, Xavier departed for Cheyenne the next morning. While he was gone, Lily threw herself into improving the store. She cleaned every surface, rearranged displays to hide the empty shelves, and tallied exactly what would be needed to restore full inventory. The task was daunting. Beyond the basic necessities, a proper mercantile in a growing town needed variety. Fabrics and notions for the women, tools and hardware for the men, candy and small toys for the children. All of it required capital Lily simply didn't have. On the third day of Xavier's absence, the Baldwin gang struck again, this time at a stagecoach 10 miles outside of Fort Bridger. 2 passengers were killed, and the strongbox containing nearly $3,000 was stolen. Sheriff Denton organized a posse, but as with previous robberies, the bandits vanished into the mountains, leaving only tracks that disappeared among the rocks. News of the robbery spread quickly through town. Lily listened to the discussions in her store with growing unease. The gang was becoming bolder, and the law seemed powerless to stop them. "They'll hit the bank next, mark my words," predicted old Tom Baker as he paid for his tobacco, "or maybe come back here to finish what they started." "That's enough, Tom," chided his wife. "No need to frighten the girl." "Not trying to frighten, just speaking truth. Those Baldwin boys are getting cockier by the day." After they left, Lily checked the small revolver her father had kept beneath the counter. It was loaded, though she had fired it only a handful of times and doubted her ability to hit anything in a moment of crisis. Still, its presence provided some comfort. Xavier returned on the 5th day, riding into town on a wagon loaded with supplies and pulling a second horse behind. He brought not only the promised money but also goods to restock the mercantile: flour, sugar, coffee, ammunition, fabric, and other essentials. "Where did all this come from?" Lily asked as they unloaded the wagon. "Used some of the money to buy wholesale in Cheyenne," Xavier explained, hefting a barrel of flour. "Figured we needed inventory more than cash sitting in a bank." Lily wanted to be annoyed at this unilateral decision, but the logic was sound. "You should have consulted me first." "Would you have objected?" "No," she admitted. "But it's the principle." Xavier set down the barrel. "You're right. Won't happen again without discussion first." His easy acceptance of her criticism surprised her. Many men would have bristled or dismissed her concerns. "Thank you for understanding. Partnership means equality," he said simply, returning to the wagon for another load. By evening, the store was transformed. Shelves that had stood empty now displayed a variety of goods, and word had spread through town that Jane's Mercantile was back in business. Customers came in steadily, and the day's receipts were the best since before the robbery. After closing, Lily and Xavier met with Judge Harrington, who had prepared a partnership agreement according to their specifications. Lily read it carefully before signing, relieved to find everything as discussed, including her option to buy Xavier out after 2.5 years. With the agreement signed and the remaining money deposited in the bank, Lily finally allowed herself to believe that the mercantile might survive after all. As they walked back to the store in the gathering dusk, she found herself studying her new partner in the golden light of sunset. Xavier Lawson was not a conventionally handsome man. His features were too weathered. his nose slightly crooked from what must have been a break at some point. But there was a strength in his profile that was undeniably attractive, and his eyes held a quiet intelligence that belied his frontier background. "Something wrong?" he asked, noticing her scrutiny. Lily looked away quickly. "Just thinking about next steps. We'll need to order more inventory, perhaps some specialty items to attract customers from outlying areas." "Good thinking. What specialties did you have in mind?" As Lily outlined her ideas, she realized how long it had been since she'd had someone to discuss business with. Her father had been increasingly distant in his final months, preoccupied with the mounting debt and his own poor health. There was something invigorating about sharing her thoughts with a receptive listener. They reached the store, and Xavier held the door for her. "Should I come by early tomorrow to help with inventory?" "Yes, that would be helpful." Lily hesitated. "Where are you staying now that you've left the Henderson Ranch?" "Found a room at Mrs. Hollister's boarding house for now. Eventually, I'll look for something more permanent." Lily nodded. "Well, good night then." "Good night, Lily." As she climbed the stairs to her apartment, Lily found herself smiling slightly at the sound of her name on his lips. It was the first time he'd used it, and there was a warmth in his voice that lingered in her memory as she prepared for bed. The next few weeks brought a steady rhythm to their partnership. Mornings were spent ordering inventory and organizing deliveries, afternoons helping customers, and evenings tallying the day's receipts and planning for tomorrow. Xavier proved to be a quick learner, mastering the pricing system and inventory procedures faster than Lily had expected. More surprising was his rapport with customers. Women who might have been reserved with a male shopkeeper found Xavier's respectful manner reassuring, while the men appreciated dealing with someone who understood their needs. Children especially took to him after he began keeping a jar of peppermint sticks behind the counter, offering one to each child who came in with their parents. "You're good with them," Lily observed one afternoon after a young boy left clutching his candy, grinning from ear to ear. Xavier shrugged. "Kids are honest, they let you know where you stand. Unlike adults, exactly unlike adults." He glanced at her with a hint of a smile. "Present company accepted, of course." "Of course," Lily echoed, finding herself returning his smile. As the end of the month approached, Lily prepared for her meeting with the bank manager. With Xavier's investment and the store's improved sales, she now had enough to make a substantial payment and negotiate new terms for the remaining debt. The morning of the meeting, she dressed with particular care, choosing a navy blue dress that conveyed seriousness without being severe. She arranged her hair in a simple but elegant twist, securing it with pins handed down from her mother. Xavier was already at the store when she came downstairs. He looked up from the ledger he was reviewing, and for a moment, something flickered in his eyes, something Lily wasn't ready to acknowledge. "You look nice," he said simply. "Thank you." Lily felt a warmth in her cheeks that had nothing to do with the summer heat. "I want to appear professional." "You'll do fine. The numbers are on our side." Our side. The phrase sent an unexpected thrill through her. It had been so long since she'd had anyone on her side. The meeting went better than anticipated. Howard Prescott, faced with a payment of $1,200 and a detailed plan for repaying the remainder, was almost cordial as he drew up the new loan agreement. The fact that Xavier sat beside Lily, his steady presence lending weight to her proposals, certainly didn't hurt. "Well, Miss Jane, it seems you've managed to secure your father's legacy after all," Prescott remarked as he blotted his signature on the documents. "With Mr. Lawson's assistance, of course." "The mercantile has always been secure, Mr. Prescott," Lily replied evenly. "It simply needed a brief period of adjustment following my father's death." Prescott's patronizing smile slipped slightly. Yes, well, the bank is pleased to continue our relationship with Jane's Mercantile under these new terms. As they left the bank, Lily felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The immediate crisis was averted, and for the first time since her father's death, she could look to the future with cautious optimism. "We should celebrate," Xavier suggested as they walked back to the store. "Celebrate, securing the loan, saving the store, seems worth marking the occasion." Lily considered this. Celebration hadn't been part of her life for so long that the concept felt almost foreign. "What did you have in mind?" "Dinner at the hotel restaurant. I hear they've got a new cook from St. Louis who knows his way around a beefsteak." The invitation hovered between them, more significant than it appeared on the surface. Dining together publicly would shift their relationship in the eyes of the town, moving it beyond mere business partnership into something potentially more personal. Lily hesitated, then made her decision. "I'd like that." Xavier's smile was warm. "I'll call for you at 7. The rest of the day passed in a blur of customers and deliveries, but Lily found her thoughts repeatedly drifting to the evening ahead. It wasn't a courtship, she told herself firmly. Just two business partners celebrating a professional achievement. Yet she found herself changing into her best dress, a deep green silk that brought out the color of her eyes, and spending extra time with her hair. When Xavier knocked at the apartment door promptly at 7, Lily's heart quickened in a way that had nothing to do with business partnerships. He had clearly made an effort as well, wearing a clean black suit that fit his broad shoulders surprisingly well and a crisp white shirt. His dark hair was neatly combed, though a rebellious lock still curled at his collar. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice lower than usual. "Thank you." Lily's response came out softer than intended. She cleared her throat. "You look very nice yourself." The hotel restaurant was busy but not crowded, the dinner hour still early by frontier standards. Heads turned as Xavier led Lily to a table near the window, and she could almost feel the speculation rippling through the room. By morning, half the town would be discussing their dinner. Strangely, the knowledge didn't bother her as much as it might have once. Let them talk. She had saved her father's store and secured her future. That was what mattered. The meal was indeed excellent, the steak tender and flavorful, a luxury Lily hadn't allowed herself in months. More surprising was the conversation. Away from the mercantile, Xavier revealed a broader knowledge of the world than she had expected, discussing everything from politics to literature with thoughtful insight. "Where did you learn all this?" Lily asked after he quoted Shakespeare with casual accuracy. "You never mentioned education in your background." Xavier cut a piece of steak. "My mother was a school teacher before she married, believed in education even on the frontier, made sure I read every book she could get her hands on." "She sounds remarkable." She was. A shadow crossed his face. "Lost her and my father both to cholera when I was 16. That's when I left Missouri." "I'm sorry," Lily said softly, understanding all too well the pain of loss. Xavier nodded acknowledgement. "What about you?" "Have you always lived in Fort Bridger?" "Since I was 7. Before that, St. Louis. My mother died in childbirth there. My brother lived only a few days after her. Father decided to start fresh in the territories. Must have been a difficult journey for a child." "I don't remember much of it," Lily admitted. "Just fragments, the endless rocking of the wagon, campfires at night, my father's determination to reach Wyoming. He succeeded, built a good life here." "Yes," Lily smiled sadly. "He did." Their shared understanding of loss created a connection deeper than business, a foundation of mutual empathy that shifted something fundamental between them. By the time Xavier walked Lily back to the store, their conversation had moved from the past to hopes for the future, his dream of eventually owning land. her ambition to expand the mercantile, to include specialized goods not available elsewhere in the territory. At the door to her apartment, Xavier paused. "Thank you for dinner." "You're the one who paid," Lily reminded him with a smile, "for the company then." The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with unspoken possibility. For a moment, Lily thought he might lean down to kiss her, and more surprising, she realized she wanted him to. Instead, Xavier took her hand gently, raising it to his lips in a gesture both old-fashioned and oddly moving. "Good night, Lily." "Good night, Xavier," her voice barely above a whisper. As she watched him walk away into the darkness, Lily acknowledged what she had been trying to deny since he first offered his help. She was falling for Xavier Lawson. The realization was both thrilling and terrifying. Opening her heart meant risking it being broken, a risk she had carefully avoided for years. Yet as she prepared for bed, Lily found herself thinking not of risk but of possibility. For the first time since her father's death, perhaps longer, she felt a genuine hope for the future, one that extended beyond mere survival to the promise of happiness. The summer heat gave way to the first crisp days of autumn as September arrived in Fort Bridger. The mercantile prospered under Lily and Xavier's joint management, drawing customers not only from town but increasingly from outlying ranches and settlements. Word had spread that Jane's mercantile was worth the journey, with fair prices and a growing selection of goods not available elsewhere. Their partnership developed a comfortable rhythm, each complementing the other's strengths. Lily's meticulous attention to detail balanced Xavier's broader vision, while his easy way with people softened her more reserved manner. Together, they made decisions that gradually transformed the store from a basic supply outlet to a true mercantile serving diverse needs. Though they maintained professional decorum during business hours, their evenings often extended into shared meals or walks along the river that ran behind the town. Their conversations ranged widely, revealing the person behind the partner. Lily learned of Xavier's time on cattle drives, the characters he'd met, the places he'd seen. In turn, she shared memories of her childhood in St. Louis, her father's early struggles in Fort Bridger, her dreams of someday traveling east again to visit the great cities. On a particularly pleasant evening in mid-September, they sat on a fallen log by the river, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and crimson. Xavier had been unusually quiet, seemingly lost in thought. "Something troubling you?" Lily finally asked. Xavier tossed a stone into the water, watching the ripples spread. "Been hearing things about the Baldwin gang. They've gone quiet, too quiet. Isn't that good news? Not when they usually hit every few weeks. Means they're planning something bigger." Lily felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. "You think they'll come back to Fort Bridger, maybe?" Xavier looked at her directly. "I want you to learn to shoot properly." The request startled her. "I know how to fire a gun." Knowing how to fire and knowing how to hit what you're aiming at are different skills. His expression was serious. "If trouble comes and I'm not there, you need to be able to protect yourself." Lily wanted to protest that she could take care of herself, but the memory of her father lying dead in the street stopped her. "All right," she agreed. "When do we start?" "Tomorrow, if you're willing. Early, before the store opens." They began the next morning in the meadow behind the town, Xavier setting up bottles on a fallen tree trunk at various distances. He showed Lily how to hold her father's revolver properly, how to sight along the barrel, how to control her breathing as she squeezed the trigger. Her first shots went wild, but Xavier was a patient teacher, adjusting her stance, guiding her aim with gentle hands on her shoulders. By the time the sun rose fully above the mountains, Lily could hit the closer targets consistently. "Good," Xavier approved as she knocked a bottle from the trunk. "You're a natural." "Hardly," Lily laughed, lowering the pistol, "but I'm better than I was." They practiced each morning for a week, Lily's aim improving steadily. There was something empowering about the lessons, about knowing she could defend herself if necessary. It was a skill she hoped never to need, but was grateful to possess. The lessons also brought a new physical awareness between them. Xavier's hands guiding her arms, his body close behind hers as he demonstrated proper stance. These moments of contact lingered in Lily's mind long after they returned to the store. One morning, after a particularly successful session where she hit every target, Lily turned to Xavier with a triumphant smile. He was watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. For a heartbeat, they stood frozen, something electric passing between them. Then Xavier stepped forward, one hand rising to cup her cheek. "Lily," he said softly, just her name, a question and statement in one. She answered by lifting her face to his, and then his lips were on hers, gentle at first, then more insistent as she responded. His arms encircled her, pulling her against his chest, and Lily felt herself melting into the embrace, all thoughts of propriety forgotten in the heat of the moment. When they finally parted, both breathing hard, Xavier rested his forehead against hers. "Been wanting to do that for weeks," he confessed. "What took you so long?" Lily surprised herself with her boldness. Xavier's laugh was warm against her skin. "Wasn't sure my attentions would be welcome. You're not exactly easy to read, Lily Jane. And now I think maybe I'm learning." He kissed her again, more briefly but with no less feeling. "We should get back. Store opens in an hour." The walk back to town was filled with stolen glances and brush of hands, a new awareness humming between them. Lily felt almost lightheaded with the strangeness of it all, how quickly life could change, how a person could enter your world and transform it completely. At the store, they resumed their professional roles, but there was an undercurrent of connection that colored every interaction. When their fingers touched passing inventory, when their eyes met across the counter, each moment held a new significance. The day passed in a blur, and when the last customer left, Xavier locked the door behind them with a decisive click. In the sudden quiet of the store, Lily felt a fluttering anticipation. "Have dinner with me," Xavier said, but it wasn't really a question. "Yes," Lily answered simply. That night marked a turning point in their relationship. Over dinner at the small restaurant on the edge of town, they spoke not as business partners, but as a man and woman discovering each other in a new light. Xavier told her of his hopes for the future, a home of his own, perhaps land outside of town where he could raise horses. Lily shared her dreams of expanding the mercantile, of creating something that would last. "Would there be room for someone else in those dreams?" Xavier asked, his hand covering hers on the table. Lily turned her palm up to twine her fingers with his. "I think there might be." The admission was both exhilarating and frightening, opening a door she had kept firmly closed since her father's death. But Xavier's steady presence, his unwavering support through the darkest days of her life, had earned a trust she hadn't thought herself capable of giving again. As autumn deepened toward winter, their relationship blossomed alongside the business. The mercantile became known not just for its inventory, but for the warm, welcome customers received, whether from the quietly efficient Miss Jane or the genial Mr. Lawson. Together, they built something neither could have created alone, but shadows still lingered on the horizon. The Baldwin gang remained at large, their extended absence from criminal activity only increasing tensions in the county. When they struck again in early October, robbing a payroll wagon bound for the railroad construction site and killing 2 guards, fear rippled through Fort Bridger. "They're getting bolder," Xavier noted grimly as they read the news. And more violent. Lily shivered despite the warm stove heating the store. Sheriff Denton thinks they might have gone north to Montana Territory. Sheriff Denton is a fool. Xavier's tone was harsher than she'd ever heard from him. They're still here, watching, planning. I can feel it. His certainty unsettled her. How can you be so sure? Xavier's expression clouded. Let's just say I've known men like the Baldwins before. They don't leave good hunting grounds until they're forced out. The conversation left Lily uneasy, a feeling that persisted as they closed the store that evening. Xavier had been distracted all day, his usual good humor replaced by a vigilant watchfulness that reminded her he had once ridden as a stage guard, a job that required constant awareness of danger. "Would you stay for dinner?" she asked as they tallied the day's receipts. "I made stew yesterday that could be heated." Xavier's smile returned, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'd like that." In her small apartment above the store, Lily busied herself with preparations while Xavier built up the fire in the stove. The domestic scene, so ordinary yet so precious, struck her with sudden force. In just a few months, this man had become essential to her life in ways that went far beyond business. Over dinner, Xavier gradually relaxed, his earlier tension easing as they discussed plans for the store's winter inventory. The subject of the Baldwin gang did not arise again, but Lily sensed it remained in his thoughts. "You're worried," she said finally, reaching across the table to touch his hand. "About the Baldwins." Xavier turned his palm up to grasp her fingers. "Just cautious. They've hit every major business in the county except the bank here in town. It's only a matter of time. And when they do, we'll be ready." His grip tightened slightly. "I won't let anything happen to you, Lily." The promise hung in the air between them, weighted with more meaning than the words themselves. Lily felt tears prick at her eyes, unexpected emotion welling up at the simple declaration of protection. "I know," she whispered. After dinner, they sat together on the small sofa before the fire, the intimacy of the moment both new and somehow familiar, as though they had done this countless times before. Xavier's arm around her shoulders, Lily's head resting against him, the positions they found themselves in seemed natural, inevitable. When Xavier finally rose to leave, the night having grown late, Lily walked him to the door with reluctance. Their goodnight kiss lingered, deepened, sparked into something more demanding. Xavier pulled back first, his breathing uneven. "If I don't leave now," he began. Lily pressed a finger to his lips. "I know," she said again. "Good night, Xavier." After he left, Lily stood at the window watching his figure disappear down the dark street, her heart full with emotions she was only beginning to understand. Whatever dangers lay ahead, whatever challenges they might face, she was no longer facing them alone. For the first time since her father's death, perhaps for the first time in her adult life, Lily Jane felt truly protected. Not because she couldn't protect herself, but because someone cared enough to stand beside her against whatever might come. The thought carried her into dreams of a future brighter than any she had dared imagine before Xavier Lawson walked into her store and refused to leave her to face her troubles alone. November arrived with biting winds and the promise of an early winter. Snow dusted the distant mountains, and the streets of Fort Bridger grew quieter as people hurried between destinations rather than lingering to socialize. Inside Jane's Mercantile, however, business thrived. Cold weather drove customers to stock up on supplies, and the approaching holidays created demand for special items Xavier had thoughtfully ordered from Eastern suppliers. On a particularly busy Saturday, the store was filled with customers when Howard Prescott entered, bringing with him the chill of the outside air and an unusually solemn expression. He made his way to the counter, where Lily was measuring fabric for Mrs. Henderson. "Miss Jane," he greeted her, removing his hat. "Might I have a word when you're free? Bank business." Lily's hand stilled momentarily on the scissors before she continued her task. "Of course, Mr. Prescott. I'll be available in about 15 minutes." The banker nodded and moved to examine a display of imported candies while he waited. Lily finished with Mrs. Henderson and helped 2 more customers before she was able to approach Prescott. "Shall we speak in the office?" she suggested, gesturing toward the back room. Xavier, who had been watching the exchange while restocking shelves, caught her eye with a questioning look. Lily gave a small nod, indicating he should join them. Once in the office, Prescott cleared his throat. "I'll come straight to the point, Miss Jane. The bank has received information that the Baldwin gang may be planning to rob us in the near future." Lily exchanged a glance with Xavier, whose expression had hardened. "What kind of information?" he asked. "A letter, anonymous, delivered yesterday. It warned that the gang has been watching the bank's shipments and plans to strike when the next large cash transfer arrives." Prescott's usual composure seemed strained. "That transfer is scheduled for next Tuesday." "Have you informed Sheriff Denton?" Lily asked. "Of course. He's arranging additional deputies to guard the delivery." Prescott hesitated. "But given the gang's previous successes against armed men, I'm not entirely confident in these measures, which is why I've come to you." "To us?" Lily was confused. "To Mr. Lawson specifically." Prescott turned to Xavier. "Your reputation precedes you, sir. I understand you have experience with security matters from your time with the stage company." Xavier's expression revealed nothing. "Some. The bank would like to hire you as additional security for the transfer. You'd be well compensated, of course." "No." Xavier's response was immediate and firm. "I'm prepared to offer $50 for a single day's work," Prescott pressed. "The answer's still no." Xavier crossed his arms. "My place is here, protecting this store and Miss Jane." Prescott looked baffled. Surely Mr. Henderson or one of his hands could watch the store for a day. "It's not about the store," Xavier said evenly. "It's about priorities. Mine is Lily's safety." Lily felt warmth spread through her at his words, even as a frown creased her brow. "The bank is important to the whole town, Xavier. If it's robbed, then the town loses money. If something happens to you, I lose everything." The intensity in his voice silenced her objection. Prescott looked between them, realization dawning on his face. "I see," he said slowly. "Well then, perhaps we could arrange for additional protection here as well. The mercantile has already been targeted once, after all." Xavier considered this. What exactly did the letter say? About timing. Only that they would strike when the money arrives. The stage is due Tuesday at noon. "And how much is coming in?" $10,000. Prescott named the sum with clear discomfort. "For the railroad payroll and several large business transactions." Xavier whistled softly. "No wonder they're interested." He glanced at Lily, then back to Prescott. "I won't leave the store, but I might be able to help with planning. The Baldwins operate according to patterns. Understanding those patterns could give us an advantage." Prescott nodded eagerly. "Any assistance would be appreciated." "Perhaps you could meet with Sheriff Denton tomorrow to discuss strategy." "I'll be there," Xavier agreed. After Prescott left, Lily turned to Xavier with concern etched on her face. "You really think they'll come back here?" "I think we need to be prepared for the possibility." Xavier ran a hand through his hair. "The bank's the obvious target, but they've hit this store before. They know the layout, know there's a safe." "There's almost nothing in the safe now," Lily pointed out. "We deposit daily at the bank." "They don't know that." Xavier paced the small office. "From now until this is resolved, I want you armed at all times, and I'll be staying in the store at night. Staying here. But no arguments, Lily." His tone brooked no disagreement. "I'm not taking chances with your safety." Lily wanted to protest that she could take care of herself, that they had been practicing shooting for weeks now, that she wasn't helpless. But the memory of her father's blood staining the floorboards stopped her. Pride was a luxury that could cost lives. "All right," she conceded. "But you'll sleep in the spare room upstairs, not down here on the floor." Xavier's expression softened slightly. "Deal." The next day, Sunday, Xavier met with Sheriff Denton and several deputized townsmen to plan security for the bank transfer. He returned to the store in the late afternoon, his expression troubled. "Denton's a fool," he said as soon as they were alone in Lily's apartment. "He's posting men at obvious positions, making no allowance for the gang's tactics. Can't you convince him otherwise?" Xavier shook his head. "He's more concerned with appearing in control than with actual security, and he doesn't trust my assessment because I'm just a cowboy." The dismissive phrase clearly rankled. Lily placed a hand on his arm. "You're much more than that. Anyone who can't see it is the fool." His smile was brief but genuine. "Thank you." He covered her hand with his own. "But it doesn't solve the problem. The bank will be vulnerable despite the show of force, and I'm worried they might use the opportunity to hit a secondary target while everyone's attention is focused on the bank." "The store," Lily guessed, "or another business. The hotel, maybe, or the stage office." Xavier squeezed her hand. "Regardless, I want you prepared." The next 2 days passed in tense anticipation. Xavier moved his few belongings from Mrs. Hollister's boarding house to the spare room in Lily's apartment, an arrangement that raised eyebrows around town but seemed trivial compared to the potential danger. He insisted that Lily carry her revolver at all times, and he himself was never without his Colt pistol and Winchester rifle within reach. On Monday evening, as they closed the store, Xavier checked and rechecked the locks on doors and windows. He moved a heavy cabinet in front of the rear entrance and positioned another to provide cover if shooting started at the front of the store. "You're really expecting trouble, aren't you?" Lily observed as he worked. Xavier paused, wiping sweat from his brow despite the November chill. "Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. That's how you stay alive on the frontier." That night, Lily found sleep elusive. She lay awake listening to the occasional creaks of the building, the distant howl of a coyote, the soft footsteps of Xavier checking windows and doors one final time before retiring to the spare room. His presence both comforted and unsettled her. Comforted because she knew he would protect her with his life if necessary. Unsettled because that very possibility filled her with dread. She had already lost her father to violence. The thought of losing Xavier as well was unbearable. Tuesday dawned clear and cold, the sky a piercing blue that seemed to mock the tension gripping Fort Bridger. From the apartment window, Lily could see men taking positions around the bank across the street, rifles glinting in the morning sun. Sheriff Denton stood on the bank steps, issuing orders with expansive gestures that carried clearly through the crisp air. "He's making sure everyone knows who's in charge," Xavier observed from behind her, his voice tight with disapproval. "And making sure the Baldwins know exactly where his men are positioned." Lily turned to face him. In the morning light, she could see the strain in his features, the watchfulness in his eyes. He was dressed as usual in a simple shirt and trousers, but she noticed he wore his gun belt already buckled around his waist. "Do we open the store today?" she asked. Xavier considered the question. "Might be safer not to, but it would signal we're expecting trouble. Better to maintain normal appearance while staying alert." They opened at the usual time, though business was slow. Most townspeople seemed to be finding excuses to linger near the bank, watching the preparations with morbid fascination. The few customers who did enter the mercantile were more interested in gossip than goods. "Heard they're bringing in $10,000, old Tom Baker said as he browsed without buying. "Biggest shipment in Fort Bridger's history." "So they say," Xavier replied noncommittally, his attention more on the street outside than on the conversation. As noon approached, a palpable tension settled over the town. The stage was due, and with it the money that might trigger violence. Xavier positioned himself near the front window, ostensibly arranging a display but actually maintaining a clear view of the bank and the main road into town. Lily kept the revolver in her apron pocket, the weight of it a constant reminder of danger. She moved through her tasks mechanically, one part of her mind always aware of Xavier's position, of the doors and windows, of potential escape routes should the worst happen. At 11:45, the distant rumble of coach wheels and the jingle of harness announced the stage's approach. Xavier straightened, his hand moving instinctively to rest on his pistol. "It's early," he murmured, more to himself than to Lily. The coach appeared at the end of the street, horses trotting at a steady pace. It looked ordinary enough, dust covered from the journey. The driver hunched against the cold, a shotgun messenger beside him scanning the surroundings with professional wariness. Sheriff Denton and his deputies moved into position as the coach approached the bank. The few remaining customers in the mercantile drifted toward the window, drawn by the spectacle. "Maybe you should move to the back," Xavier suggested quietly to Lily. She shook her head. "I'm staying with you." The coach pulled to a stop before the bank. The messenger climbed down first, shotgun ready, eyes sweeping the street. Then the driver, followed by two passengers, ordinary travelers who seemed bemused by the reception committee. "Something's wrong," Xavier said suddenly, his body tensing. "Where's the strongbox?" Before Lily could respond, gunfire erupted not from the street as expected, but from behind them. The back window of the store shattered, glass spraying across the floor as a bullet embedded itself in the counter. "Down!" Xavier shouted, grabbing Lily and pulling her behind the sturdy oak counter as more shots rang out. Outside, confusion reigned. Sheriff Denton and his men, positioned to protect the bank, were caught entirely out of position as three masked riders appeared from a side street, guns blazing. It was a diversion, Xavier realized, his voice tight with anger. The coach was a decoy. The real money must be coming another way, and they're creating chaos to cover it. More bullets struck the store, splintering wood and shattering the front window. The few customers screamed and flattened themselves on the floor. Outside, Denton's men returned fire wildly, most of their shots going wide as the riders weaved through the street. "Stay here," Xavier ordered, checking his pistol. "They're after the money, not us. Keep down and you'll be safe." "Where are you going?" Lily clutched his arm. "To stop them before someone else dies." His expression softened momentarily. "I'll be back, I promise." Before she could protest, he was moving in a crouch toward the rear of the store, using shelves and furniture for cover. Lily watched him disappear through the stockroom door, her heart pounding with fear not for herself, but for him. The shooting outside continued, punctuated by shouts and the crash of breaking glass as businesses along the main street took fire. Lily stayed behind the counter, gun ready, her mind racing. If the coach was a decoy, where was the real money? And how had the Baldwins known about it? The answer came in a sudden, chilling realization. Someone in town had betrayed them. Someone who knew the bank's plans, who could have arranged the alternate delivery. Before she could follow this thought further, the rear door of the store burst open. Two masked men entered, rifles raised. Lily ducked lower behind the counter, her breath caught in her throat. "Check the safe," one ordered, his voice muffled by the bandana covering his face. "I'll watch the front." Footsteps moved toward the office where the safe was located. The second man took position near the counter, his back to Lily's hiding place. She could see his boots, hear his breathing, smell the tobacco and sweat that clung to him. Her hand tightened on her revolver. She could shoot him now, take him by surprise. But what about the other man? And where was Xavier? The decision was made for her when a voice called from the office. "Safe's empty. Check behind the counter," the man near Lily ordered. "Might be a strong box." Footsteps approached. Lily tensed, knowing she had seconds to act. As the man rounded the counter, she rose to her knees, the revolver steady in her hands just as Xavier had taught her. "Stop right there," she commanded, her voice remarkably calm despite the terror coursing through her. The robber froze, his eyes widening behind his mask. "Well, well, if it ain't the little shopkeeper." He raised his rifle slowly. "Put down that popgun before you hurt yourself, girl." "I said stop." Lily cocked the hammer. "I know how to use this." For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then the man lunged forward, rifle swinging toward her. Lily squeezed the trigger. The shot was deafening in the confined space. The robber staggered, clutching his shoulder where her bullet had struck. His rifle clattered to the floor. "You shot me," he gasped, more shocked than pained. "Next one goes in your head if you move," Lily warned, her hands shaking now but her aim still true. The second robber appeared from the office, alerted by the shot. He raised his gun, but before he could fire, another shot rang out from the stockroom door. The man cried out, dropping his weapon as blood blossomed on his leg. Xavier stepped into view, his Winchester trained on the wounded robbers. "Drop your guns and get on the floor," he ordered, his voice cold with controlled anger. Both men complied, recognizing the deadly seriousness in his tone. Outside, the shooting had stopped, replaced by shouts and the sound of running feet as townspeople emerged from hiding. "Lily." Xavier's eyes found hers, concern replacing the hard edge of battle. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, suddenly unable to speak as reaction set in. Her hands trembled violently, and she carefully uncocked the revolver before setting it on the counter. Xavier crossed to her in 2 long strides, wrapping one arm around her while keeping his rifle trained on the robbers with the other. "It's over," he murmured against her hair. "You're safe." Sheriff Denton burst through the front door moments later, followed by 2 deputies. "What in tarnation?" he exclaimed, taking in the scene 2 wounded men on the floor, Xavier holding Lily, the destruction of the store around them. "Baldwin gang decided your bank wasn't the only target," Xavier explained tersely. "These 2 came in the back while their friends created a diversion." Denton's face reddened. "You saying I was outsmarted?" "I'm saying they had inside information," Xavier replied evenly. "Someone who knew about the money shipment and the security plans." The accusation hung in the air as the deputies secured the wounded robbers. One of the men, the one Lily had shot, glared at her with naked hatred. "You'll pay for this," he hissed. "Jim Baldwin doesn't forget." "Shut your mouth," ordered a deputy, roughly hauling him to his feet. When they were gone, Xavier finally lowered his rifle and turned fully to Lily. "You shot one of them," he said, a mixture of pride and concern in his voice. "He was going to kill me," Lily replied, her composure returning gradually. "I didn't think, I just reacted. You saved your own life." Xavier's hands framed her face, and possibly mine. "Those shooting lessons paid off." Lily managed a shaky smile. "I had a good teacher." Around them, the store lay in ruins, shelves toppled, merchandise scattered, windows broken. The damage would take weeks to repair and cost hundreds of dollars. Yet in that moment, Lily felt only gratitude that they were both alive. "I thought I might lose you," she admitted, her voice barely audible. Xavier's expression softened. "Not a chance." He bent to kiss her, a brief but fervent promise. "Takes more than the Baldwin gang to separate me from what matters most." The simple declaration, spoken amid the wreckage of her store, struck Lily with unexpected force. This man, who had walked into her life when she was at her lowest point, had become essential to her happiness in ways she was only beginning to fully understand. "I love you," she said, the words emerging without conscious thought. Xavier's smile bloomed slowly, transforming his face. "I've been waiting to hear that." He drew her closer. "I love you too, Lily Jane. Have from the first day you told me you didn't need my help." Lily laughed despite everything, remembering her stubborn pride in those early days. "I was wrong." "No," Xavier countered gently. "You were strong. Still are. Strong enough to accept help when it's offered and to give it when it's needed. That's why I fell in love with you." Around them, townspeople began to gather, exclaiming over the damage, offering assistance with cleanup. The crisis had passed, but its repercussions would continue. Questions about who had informed the Baldwin gang, concerns about the remaining members still at large, the process of rebuilding what had been damaged. But for Lily and Xavier, standing amid the destruction of the store they had worked so hard to save, one truth outweighed all others. They had found in each other something worth far more than the mercantile or its contents. They had found home. In the days following the attempted robbery, Fort Bridger buzzed with activity and speculation. 2 members of the Baldwin gang lay wounded in the jail, but their leader, Jim Baldwin, and at least 3 others remained at large. Sheriff Denton organized posses to search the surrounding countryside, but winter weather made tracking difficult, and the gang seemed to have vanished into the wilderness. Meanwhile, the question of who had tipped off the bandits remained unanswered. Suspicion fell initially on a bank clerk who had disappeared the day of the robbery, but he was found dead in a ravine outside town, apparently killed to silence him after he had served his purpose. For Lily and Xavier, these developments took secondary importance to the immediate challenge of rebuilding the mercantile. The physical damage was extensive: windows shattered, shelves splintered, inventory destroyed or stolen. But the community rallied around them, with townspeople volunteering labor and materials to help with repairs. "Never thought I'd be grateful for a robbery," Lily remarked one evening as they reviewed the day's progress. The front window had been replaced, the interior largely cleared of debris, and new shelving was being constructed. Xavier looked up from the inventory list he was compiling. "Grateful for how it's brought people together." Lily gestured to the improvements. "Mrs. Henderson bringing food for the workers, Judge Harrington donating lumber, even Prescott extending our loan without interest until we're back on our feet. People respect what you've built here," Xavier observed, "and they admire your courage during the robbery. Word's gotten around that you shot one of the Baldwin gang." Lily winced slightly. The memory of pulling the trigger, of watching the man fall, still disturbed her sleep. "I didn't have much choice." "You didn't," Xavier agreed, "but many would have frozen in that situation. You acted." He set aside the list and crossed to where she stood. "I'm proud of you, Lily, and a little in awe, if I'm honest." His admiration warmed her. In the aftermath of the robbery, their relationship had deepened, the shared danger creating a bond that transcended ordinary courtship. Xavier had remained in the apartment above the store, ostensibly to provide security while the Baldwin gang remained at large, but they both knew his presence had become about more than protection. "When do you think we can reopen?" Lily asked, leaning into his embrace. "Another week, maybe 2. Xavier's arms tightened around her. just in time for the Christmas rush. The mention of Christmas brought a smile to Lily's face. I'd almost forgotten the holiday was coming. Hard to remember with everything that's happened, Xavier agreed, but it'll be here before we know it. And I was thinking. Yes, Lily prompted when he hesitated. I was thinking it might be nice to have something special to celebrate this year, something besides the store reopening. There was a quality to his voice that made Lily pull back slightly to study his face. What kind of something? Xavier met her gaze directly. A wedding. The word hung in the air between them, momentous and transformative. Lily's breath caught, her heart suddenly racing. Are you asking me to marry you, Xavier Lawson? Not doing a very good job of it, am I? His smile was rueful as he took her hands in his. I had planned something more romantic, dinner at the hotel, maybe, or a ride out to the river when it wasn't half frozen. But seeing you here in this place we've built together. He shook his head. I don't want to wait any longer to ask you to be my wife. Lily felt tears prick at her eyes, unexpected emotion welling up at the simple, heartfelt proposal. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. The joy that spread across Xavier's face matched the warmth blooming in her own chest. He pulled her close, kissing her with a tenderness that spoke of promises kept and a future shared. When they finally parted, both breathless, Xavier reached into his pocket. I have something for you. Been carrying it for weeks, waiting for the right moment. He produced a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a delicate gold ring set with a single pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. It was my mother's, he explained. The only thing of value I kept when I left Missouri. Lily gasped softly at the beauty of the ring and the significance behind it. Xavier, it's perfect, but are you sure it's such a treasured keepsake? I'm sure. He slipped the ring onto her finger where it settled as though made for her hand. My mother would have loved you, Lily. She valued strength and kindness above all else. You have both in abundance. The ring caught the lamplight, the pearl glowing warmly against her skin. Lily stared at it, still hardly believing the turn her life had taken in the months since her father's death. From despair to hope, from isolation to love, the journey had been unexpected and transformative. Christmas wedding, then? She asked, smiling through happy tears. If that's what you want. Though we don't have to wait if you'd prefer sooner, Lily considered. Christmas would be perfect. Just over a month to prepare, and the store should be fully restored by then. Christmas it is. Xavier sealed the agreement with another kiss. The news of their engagement spread quickly through Fort Bridger, generating a wave of congratulations and good wishes. If anyone disapproved of the relatively brief courtship, they kept their opinions to themselves. In frontier towns, practical considerations often outweighed social conventions, and the partnership between Lily and Xavier had proven its worth both in business and in crisis. With a wedding to plan alongside the store renovations, the next weeks passed in a blur of activity. Lily ordered fabric for a wedding dress from a supplier in Cheyenne, while Xavier arranged for the minister and secured the church for Christmas Eve. Together, they worked to restore the mercantile, determined to reopen before the holiday shopping season began in earnest. 2 weeks after the robbery, on a clear, cold morning in early December, Jane's Mercantile reopened its doors. The restored interior gleamed with fresh paint and varnish, the shelves stocked with newly arrived inventory. A large sign in the window announced "Grand Reopening" and Christmas goods now available. Customers came in a steady stream throughout the day, many expressing delight at the improvements and offering congratulations on the upcoming wedding. By closing time, the cash drawer was fuller than it had been in months. Successful day, Xavier observed as he locked the front door. Very. Lily smiled, tallying the receipts. If business continues like this through Christmas, We'll be able to pay back Judge Harrington for the lumber and still have a healthy profit. Speaking of Christmas, Xavier began, moving to stand beside her at the counter. I've been thinking about after the wedding. Oh. Lily looked up, curious. We can't both continue living in that tiny apartment upstairs. It was fine as a temporary arrangement, but for a married couple. He shook his head. We need a proper home. Lily had been so focused on the store and the wedding that she had given little thought to their living situation afterward. You're right, of course. We could look for a larger apartment in town. Actually, I had something else in mind. Xavier reached into his pocket and unfolded a document. I've been negotiating with Henderson. He's willing to sell a parcel of his land, 20 acres just outside town, with access to the river. Lily took the paper, scanning the legal description. This is substantial. What would we do with 20 acres? Build a home to start. Eventually, maybe raise some horses, grow our own vegetables, have room for children to run. Xavier watched her reaction carefully. It would mean riding into town each day to open the store, but it's less than 2 miles. In good weather, an easy journey. The vision he painted was appealing, a home of their own, space to grow, the privacy that town living couldn't provide. Yet it represented another significant change in a year already filled with upheaval. It's a lot to consider, Lily said slowly. We don't have to decide immediately, Xavier assured her. Henderson's given us until after New Year's to make an offer. Lily nodded, relieved not to face another major decision before the wedding. Let's focus on becoming husband and wife first, then we can decide where we'll make our home. Xavier agreed, but Lily could tell the idea of the land meant a great deal to him. For a man who had spent most of his adult life wandering, the prospect of putting down roots, of building something permanent, clearly held powerful appeal. As December progressed, Fort Bridger prepared for both Christmas and the winter that would follow. Snow fell more frequently, transforming the town into a landscape of white broken by the warm glow of lamps in windows. The mercantile did brisk business in winter supplies, holiday gifts, and special food items Xavier had ordered from Eastern suppliers. The Baldwin gang faded from immediate concern as weeks passed without incident. Sheriff Denton declared the remaining members had likely fled to Montana or Idaho Territory, a assessment Xavier privately doubted but chose not to challenge. The wounded gang members captured during the robbery were transported to Cheyenne to await trial, their departure removing the most visible reminder of the violence that had marred the town. A week before Christmas, Lily's wedding dress arrived from the dressmaker in Cheyenne, who had worked from measurements and detailed instructions. The gown was simpler than Eastern fashion dictated, but elegant in its restraint. Ivory silk with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs, the skirt falling in clean lines without the elaborate bustling common in city styles. It's perfect, Lily breathed as she unwrapped it in the apartment, careful not to let Xavier see. Tradition held that the groom shouldn't view the bride's dress before the wedding, a custom Lily found herself unexpectedly eager to honor. I'll take your word for it, Xavier called from the kitchen, where he was deliberately occupying himself with coffee making. Though I suspect you'd look beautiful in sackcloth. Lily laughed, quickly rewrapping the dress. Flattery will get you everywhere, Mr. Lawson. I certainly hope so, future Mrs. Lawson. The ease of their banter, the comfortable domesticity they had established even before their marriage, confirmed for Lily that she had made the right decision in accepting Xavier's proposal. What had begun as a business partnership had evolved naturally into a deeper bond based on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine affection that grew daily into something more profound. Christmas Eve arrived with clear skies and bitter cold, the temperature barely reaching 0 despite the bright sunshine. The mercantile closed early, allowing Lily and Xavier time to prepare for the evening ceremony at the small church. Lily dressed in her apartment with the assistance of Mrs. Henderson, who had kindly offered to help with the traditional preparations. The older woman arranged Lily's auburn hair in an elegant knot adorned with small white flowers, then helped her into the wedding gown. "You look radiant, my dear, Mrs. Henderson declared, stepping back to admire the effect. "Xavier is a fortunate man." "I'm the fortunate one," Lily replied, smoothing the silk skirt with trembling hands. "6 months ago I thought I'd lost everything. Now you have a future brighter than you could have imagined, Mrs. Henderson finished for her. "That's the Lord's way, sometimes bringing blessings out of tragedy." Lily nodded, too overcome with emotion to respond verbally. She thought of her father, wishing he could be present to give her away, to see the happiness she had found. Yet somehow she felt he knew that he would approve of the man who had helped save his legacy and his daughter's future. A soft knock at the door announced the arrival of Judge Harrington, who had agreed to escort Lily to the church in her father's absence. Mrs. Henderson admitted him, then tactfully withdrew to take her place at the ceremony. "My dear Miss Jane," the judge said, his usually stern expression softening at the sight of her, "you are a vision." "Thank you, Judge." Lily gathered her small bouquet of hothouse flowers, a luxury Xavier had insisted upon despite the expense of blooms in winter. "Is everything ready at the church?" "Indeed. Your groom awaits, looking only slightly terrified." The judge's eyes twinkled with humor. "As is proper for a man about to commit his life to another's keeping." Lily laughed, her nervousness easing. "Then we shouldn't keep him waiting." The short journey to the church passed in a blur of cold air and warm greetings from townspeople who stepped aside to let the bride pass. At the church steps, Lily paused, taking a deep breath before entering. Inside, the small building was transformed by evergreen boughs and candles, their flickering light casting a golden glow over the gathered guests. At the altar stood Xavier, more formally dressed than she had ever seen him, in a new black suit, his dark hair neatly combed, his face solemn until he caught sight of her. Then his expression changed to one of such transparent joy and wonder that Lily felt her heart skip. As Judge Harrington led her down the short aisle, Lily held Xavier's gaze, drawing strength and certainty from the love she saw reflected there. When they reached the altar, the judge placed her hand in Xavier's with formal dignity before taking his seat. "You're beautiful," Xavier whispered, his voice rough with emotion. Before Lily could respond, the minister began the ceremony, his words washing over them as they stood hand in hand, exchanging vows that seemed both ancient and newborn in the moment of their speaking. The ring Xavier placed on her finger to join her engagement band was a simple gold circle, enduring in its simplicity. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister declared at last. "You may kiss your bride." Xavier needed no further encouragement, drawing Lily into an embrace that balanced respect for their audience with the depth of his feelings. When they turned to face the congregation as Mr. and Mrs. Lawson, the applause was enthusiastic and genuine. The celebration continued at the hotel, where a dinner had been arranged for wedding guests. Food and drink flowed freely. Toasts were offered, and even Sheriff Denton unbent enough to wish the couple well, though his manner toward Xavier remained somewhat cool following their disagreement over security. As the evening progressed, Lily found herself watching her husband, the word still new and wonderful as he moved among their guests, accepting congratulations with easy grace. This man who had walked into her store offering help she hadn't requested had become the center of her world, her partner in all things. When they finally made their escape from the celebration, the night had deepened, stars blazing in the clear, cold sky above Fort Bridger. Xavier had arranged for a sleigh to take them not to the apartment above the store but to a surprise destination. "Where are we going?" Lily asked as he tucked blankets around them. "You'll see." His smile was mysterious in the moonlight. The sleigh carried them out of town along the river road, eventually turning onto a smaller track that Lily recognized as leading to the Henderson property. After about a mile, they crested a small rise, and Xavier directed the driver to stop. "Here we are," he announced, helping Lily from the sleigh. Before them stood a small cabin, light glowing from its windows, smoke curling from the chimney into the night air. Around it stretched open land, now covered in snow but clearly the 20 acres Xavier had mentioned purchasing. "What is this?" Lily asked, though she had already guessed. "Our home," Xavier said simply. "If you want it to be." Lily stared at the cabin in amazement. "When did you? How?" "I started building it the day after I proposed," Xavier explained. "Henderson's men helped when they could spare time. It's not fancy, just 2 rooms for now with space to add more as needed, but it's solid and it's ours." Overwhelmed, Lily turned to embrace him, tears freezing on her cheeks in the bitter cold. "It's perfect," she whispered against his chest. "Absolutely perfect." Xavier lifted her into his arms, carrying her toward the cabin. "Welcome home, Mrs. Lawson." Inside, the cabin was warmed by a crackling fire in the stone hearth. Simple but sturdy furniture filled the main room, a table and chairs, a sofa near the fire, shelves lined with books Xavier must have brought from his own collection. Through an open door, Lily glimpsed the bedroom with its large 4-poster bed, clearly the piece Xavier had lavished most attention upon. "Do you really like it?" he asked, suddenly uncertain as he set her down. "I know it's not what you're used to, living in town." Lily turned slowly, taking in every detail of the home he had created for them. "I love it," she said with complete sincerity. "It's exactly what I would have chosen." Relief and happiness spread across Xavier's face. "There's more land available if we decide we want it later. Room for that horse ranch I mentioned, or whatever else we might dream up." "Dreams can wait until morning," Lily said softly, moving toward him. "Right now, I'm only interested in the present." Xavier's eyes darkened with understanding and desire. "Mrs. Lawson," he murmured, drawing her into his arms. "I do believe that's the wisest thing you've said all day." Their first night as husband and wife passed in a tender exploration of love's physical expression. The small cabin holding their whispered words and shared discoveries as winter deepened outside. For Lily, who had guarded her independence so fiercely, the act of surrender to love brought not diminishment but expansion, her world growing larger through connection rather than smaller through loss. Morning found them tangled together beneath warm quilts, the fire burned down to embers in the hearth. Lily woke first, watching the play of early light across Xavier's sleeping features. In repose, he looked younger, the wariness that frontier life instilled temporarily absent. "Stop staring," he murmured without opening his eyes. "It's disconcerting." Lily laughed softly. "I'm not staring, I'm admiring." One eye opened. "There's a difference, significant." She leaned down to kiss him. "Merry Christmas, husband." Both eyes opened at that, crinkling at the corners as he smiled. "Merry Christmas, wife." He pulled her closer. "Best gift I've ever received." They spent Christmas Day in peaceful seclusion, exploring their new home, discussing plans for improvements, sharing the simple meal Xavier had arranged to have prepared and left for them. No mention was made of the store or its demands. By mutual agreement, this day belonged solely to them. In the evening, as snow began to fall again outside, they sat before the rekindled fire, Lily nestled against Xavier's side, his arm around her shoulders. "Happy?" he asked, dropping a kiss on her hair. "Completely," Lily answered without hesitation. "Are you?" "More than I thought possible." His voice held a note of wonder. "If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be settled in Wyoming with a wife, a home, and a business, I'd have laughed them out of the territory. And if someone had told me I'd willingly share my father's store with a stubborn cowboy who refused to take no for an answer, I'd have done the same," Lily admitted. Xavier chuckled, the sound rumbling pleasantly against her ear. "Guess we both had some learning to do." "And we did it well," Lily said contentedly. As they sat watching the flames, Lily reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From her initial resistance to Xavier's help, through their business partnership, to the love that had grown between them, each step had been necessary. Each challenge overcome together, strengthening their bond. She thought of her father, of the life he had built in Fort Bridger, of his hopes for her future. He could never have envisioned Xavier Lawson or the happiness Lily had found with him. Yet somehow she felt he would approve of the man who had helped save his legacy while capturing his daughter's heart. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing their land in pristine white. Inside, the fire cast its golden glow over the first page of their shared story, a story that had begun with a woman too proud to ask for help, and a man determined to offer it anyway. What had started as an unwanted intervention had transformed into a partnership, a love, a life together. As Xavier drew her closer, Lily gave silent thanks for the stubbornness of cowboys and the unexpected blessings that could emerge from life's darkest moments. Their future stretched before them, full of promise and possibility, a journey they would travel side by side through whatever challenges lay ahead. In the warmth of their embrace, in the shelter of the home they would build together, Lily found not just safety but something she had never truly expected to discover. A love that honored her strength while supporting her in weakness, that valued her independence while offering connection, that had seen her at her most vulnerable and found her not wanting but worthy. And for a woman who had once been too proud to accept help, that was the greatest gift of all.